What's good, everyone? Today I'm going to be reviewing Blade the series. So for those of you who do not know, there was a Blade series that was loosely in continuity with the Wesley Snipes Blade trilogy. It came out in 2006 and aired on Spike TV. It was very cheaply produced. It was very low budget. Honestly, that didn't hurt the show very much, in my opinion. It does have a very cheap feel about it, but not necessarily a bad thing. The show was created by David S. Goyer, who had written all three Blade films and directed Trinity, which, from what I can tell, I don't really blame David Goyer for Blade Trinity's failure. It was a whole lot of things. I don't solely blame him. And it's very clear he's a very talented writer, director, otherwise. He wrote the Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, Man of Steel, I'm pretty sure he also helped write. He also wrote something like the Nick Fury TV movie, so his history with Marvel is a little more shaky than with DC, but I still think he's a pretty talented writer. I think he still gets Blade pretty well. This is his fourth time around with Blade, and he does pretty well. The show is produced by Avi and Ari Arad, as everything Marvel was back in the early 2000s. And it was even written by DC Comics writer Jeff Johns. The show ran for one season, and then it was canceled. So from what I can tell, it was canceled more because Spike TV couldn't really afford to keep the show going. Not because people didn't really like it, not that it has received the greatest reviews, but, and like I said, the budget doesn't really affect it. It just it looks cheap, but the writing really elevates it. Like, there's some bad CGI here and there, but other than that, it's elevated by its writing and its characters and its action scenes. So as for the actual plot of the film, I'll just do a quick recap. There's this girl, Krista, whose brother gets killed by a bunch of vampires, and trying to hunt down her brother's murderer, she obviously doesn't know they're vampires, ends up getting turned into a vampire. She then finds Blade, and he uses her as sort of a double agent to get into this society of vampires. And something the show does really well is exploring the society of vampires. It's really good at world building, fleshing out the world of Blade. Some of it might slightly contradict the previous movies, but like I said, it's only loosely in continuity, even though they do reference the movies a couple times. And you get these different houses of vampires spread throughout the earth. They're like their own different subcultures, but they're also like crime families. And it just fleshes out the world really well. Now, Krista being a double agent for Blade almost makes it feel like she's the main character, and really she is, more so than Blade. She definitely has more screen time. Blade's kind of just there to be cool and help push the plot along. Most of the time, he's just there in his little cave telling his new sidekick Shen to do Google searches about vampires for him. Now, Shen is like his new sidekick, guy in the chair type character. Of course, he's not anywhere near as good as Whistler, but I liked him more than Norman Reedus in Blade 2. But back to Krista, they make her a very interesting character where she's very conflicted, where she's she's a good guy, but she's on the bad guy's team, seeing as she's a dual agent, so she's forced to make decisions she wouldn't normally make. But she's also struggling with like a blood addiction where she takes Blade's serum to, not have the thirst. But then sometimes she ends up having to drink blood to convince the vampire she's still one of them. And also they just show how it affects her normal life, where it's just almost all gone, but the small bit of her family that's still left is still affecting her, and there's a whole subplot that goes into that that's actually fairly well done. Kind of tragic, really. And then you get into her relationship with the vampires, particularly Marcus, who's basically the head of the local crime family. And Marcus is probably my favorite character in this show. He has two sides: evil crime boss and charming vampire boyfriend. Now, Marcus is played by Neil Jackson, and he just does a great job. He can pull off being just a charming, seemingly innocent, normal person who then switches into evil vampire mode, where he just kills people like they're nothing. And he has this nice side to him where he cares about his friends, and he's kind of a likable character, and he's obviously a bad guy, but you find out his plan is to kill other evil vampires that are even worse than him, and so it's kind of easy to root for him, while also they still make it clear he's the villain, and you also want to see him defeated, which all just makes for compelling characters. Now, this time around, it's not Wesley Snipes playing Blade, it's Sticky Fingers. He's all right. He's obviously not Wesley Snipes, and that's okay. He's still pretty cool, just not as cool as Wesley Snipes. He sort of takes his character in its own direction, but while still staying true to Blade, and he does a good job. Unfortunately, one of the show's many downsides is its subplots, where it just has a lot of them, and they're not nearly as interesting as the main plots and characters, and a lot of them just don't really go anywhere too terribly interesting, or if they do, they don't really feel like they pay off how they're supposed to because they didn't build them out enough. Like, there's this whole part in the show about this FBI agent who gets all wrapped up in all this vampire business, and he gets like 5 minutes every episode where you're just like, oh yeah, that guy's in this show. What's he doing here? Oh yeah, I forgot about him. And like, he'll show up, and like, he doesn't meet any of our main characters until the second to last episode, and then you get the sort of payoff to his plotline, and it's like, oh, that wasn't bad, but it would have been better if you got me to care about this character more, you fleshed out the subplot more. But it still just doesn't really feel like it needs to be there. Like, it didn't really amount to anything. And that sort of thing happens like 2 or 3 times across the whole show. You do get like at least one pretty good subplot that was pretty interesting, that is very Blade centric, where it's about his sort of street gang of vampire buddies that he grew up with, and that was pretty interesting. And seeing as this is about Blade, is very well known for its awesome action sequences. Now, in this show, as for Blade the series, all the action is pretty solid, at least for what they were able to do on a budget. I thought it was all very solid action. They were actually able to get just a few shots of gore in there. They're all pretty awesome. I was very surprised they were able to get that on TV.
You talk too much. Listen, man, asshole. Not smiling anymore. You know, I think I see the light.
But the action scenes are unfortunately few and far between. You'll get like one big one per episode, and that's about it. It's a very, very character story centric series, and I do really think that helps their show a lot. I think the main plot line is very good. Like I said, some of the subplots just aren't very good. They don't go anywhere. But for the most part, I actually thought this show was pretty good. It's not great. It's not the most original. It has been criticized of having a lot of cliches, and it does. It does have some dodgy special effects. It is a little cheap here and there, but I did really enjoy it. And its cancellation and kind of cliffhanger-ish ending don't really affect it. It does have a very satisfying conclusion how it leaves off, and it'd be cool to get a second season, but we're never gonna get a second season. So if that sounds interesting to you, I do recommend watching it, especially if you're, a huge Marvel fan like I am. You just want to see everything Marvel's ever done. It's very interesting Marvel history. So I definitely recommend you go check it out. Overall, I give the show a solid 7 out of 10, and that's all I got for Blade the series. Thanks for watching.